Welcome to the podcast, everyone. He is John Canzano. I am Jon Wilner. Week 1 is in the books. Week 2 is coming quick. We got a lot to get to, and we're going to start with some reaction to the Week 1 games. How you doing, partner? How was your long weekend?
Really good. I mean, it felt like the official first start of college football. There was a full slate of games.
Yep.
Teams didn't look ready. Coaches, in some cases, really didn't look ready. But fans were ready, and stadiums were rocking, and college football's back. I expect better play in week 2. But what were your takeaways from week 1?
Well, it's interesting you say the better play, because it's clear to me that there's a lot. The offenses are struggling a little bit. You got new quarterbacks because of the transfer portal. You got new offensive lines. The continuity isn't there, I think, in a lot of cases. And you can see it. I would expect that we get to weeks 3, 4, 5. It'll look a little bit smoother on the whole. But, it's hard when you're you're turning over half your roster, and the key piece to the offense, the quarterback offensive line alignment, isn't there because these guys haven't had a lot of practice time.
Yeah, I thought it was most evident in the big games. It was Texas, Ohio State, and Clemson and LSU. And I felt like I was just waiting around watching those games, and I was waiting around for which team was going to make the bigger mistake. And to me, that's not football. That's just, hey, let's see who screws up first in the early part of football season. So I'll be really curious to see, and it'll be a test of coaching, right? Good teams, good coaches, the teams get better by the end of the year. How much better can Texas be with Sark at the end of the season? How much better can Ohio State be, or Clemson, LSU? Interesting one to see. And certainly we saw some teams that have talent, like Miami. They're just, Mario Cristobal's got that team built, like the embodiment of a Mario Cristobal team. He finally has that team, that physical team that he's talked about at Miami. But will they get better by the end of the season? We got to see this stuff.
Yeah, I was impressed with, I thought Utah looked really good. They looked like Utah looks when they're all healthy and they got everything humming. And UCLA looked bad. There was a lot of as many teams looked good as looked bad. I thought Boise, I watched that Boise South Florida game. I'm thinking, oh boy, it could be a little bit of a long year for the Broncos. We'll see. Same with Oregon State. Did not think they looked good. Cal, on the other hand, that quarterback, terrific. And then there's, the big schools like Alabama, they got problems.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah, I thought, I couldn't tell in the Oregon State-Cal game, is Cal good or is Oregon State bad? And Oregon State didn't look prepared. And that's on Trent Bray, the Oregon State coach. They just did not look prepared. And I got to give Cal credit. Like Jaron Kiabe, Sagapolatelli, he looked fantastic. I saw your tweet saying this first 2 drives of the game are exactly why you bring him in, and that's why Oregon wanted him. He looked fantastic. He also looked like he had Brian Harsin and Nick Rolovich coaching him. Like he had really good offensive coaches working with him. I think Washington State, Jimmy Rogers, I got people asking me, is Jimmy Rogers going to get fired? And I'm like, he's 1-0. He's undefeated. Give him some time. There's just a real challenge for coaches who are in their first year always in this era. And we saw it last year with Jonathan Smith and Trent Bray and Jed Fish and Brent Brennan. They all struggled. I think, we're going to see those first year guys struggle again this year.
Yeah, it was a good weekend for 3 coaches who are, on the hot seats. Brent Brennan in Arizona, they looked good against Hawaii. USC looked very good. It's Missouri State, but they still looked really good. And Cal, because I think Justin Wilcox is under some pressure to win, and they certainly look like they're going to be competitive in the ACC. On the other hand, I was struck that 2 coaches who are at I was struck that 2 coaches in their second year at their alma mater, Trent Bray at Oregon State, Deshaun Foster at UCLA, their teams did not look prepared. I don't think fans of either of those programs should have much reason to be confident right now that things are going to get a whole lot better. I know we're going to get to a little bit more on Oregon State later, but boy, that was a concerning performance that they did not look prepared. Bray's demeanor at halftime, he just looks frustrated. And
Yeah.
it's not, just watching the visuals, he just doesn't look comfortable, calm, and I don't know if that's impacting his team or not, but, I thought his halftime interview, a lot of frustration there.
Yeah. One of my photographers was on the Oregon State sideline during the game. He said that Bray was yelling a lot. There
Yeah.
was a lot of bickering and yelling on the sideline. You had Malik Murphy, the transfer quarterback, $1.5 million guy. ESPN's cameras caught him
Yep.
arguing, barking and clapping at the offensive consultant. And then the photographer went over to the Cal sideline, and I said, "What was it like over there?" And he said it was like a party that was going on.
Yeah.
They were just really loose and playing loose, and so yeah, I felt like Oregon State played super tight. I don't know if they win that game because they're up against a really good quarterback, but that should have been a one-score game at home.
Sure.
That should have been a really close game, and it wasn't. They didn't feel like they were in it really after halftime.
They did not, and UCLA, similar situation, right? Utah just kind of blew their doors off, and I came away thinking it's early, but you can easily see Utah winning the Big 12.
Yes.
Certainly contending for the Big 12. The kind of season I think Kyle Whittingham maybe thought he was going to have last year.
Mm-hmm.
They named Morgan Scalley the coach in waiting last summer. I'm sure that was in advance of Whittingham expecting to ride off into retirement after a good year in the Big 12, and then everything went wrong, and here he is back again, and this has the makings of the season he had hoped for last year.
Yeah, he's got a new quarterback, new coordinator. This is the fashionable thing to do. He goes out and gets, that package deal like some others did. Oklahoma did it with John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle. But Whittingham in Utah, you looked fantastic. One thing, I noticed was, I know everybody liked the big games, the top 10 games. I didn't like it. I think I don't want to see these. I want to see these games in week 4, week 5. I want to see them in the playoffs. Texas, Ohio State, interesting. Arch Manning, not a generational talent. That was evident. He's not going to put Texas on his back. You could tell from the play calling that Steve Sarkisian really didn't trust that he could just, throw him out there, let him drop back 5 steps, protect him, and find open receivers. That wasn't the game plan at Texas. But I want to see where this team is. I want to see where these top teams are towards the end of the season. Oregon took care of Montana State, payday game. I thought it was interesting. Dan Lanning played everybody. He had 12 players who rushed the football. He had 10 who caught passes, played 4 quarterbacks. He wasn't trying to put 70 or 80 points on an FCS team. He was happy with 59 and getting out of there healthy. And I think that maybe signals that Lanning understood something from last season. Maybe he learned that it's a journey and he watched Ohio State do it. We'll see. I need a bigger sample size, but it crossed my mind.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's a lot to be said for taking care of business against FCS schools. And I do wonder, and we'll probably never know the answer to this, but when I think about Oregon and Ohio State, I think back to the way the Buckeyes managed their personnel and their snaps last year.
Yes.
Ryan Day talked about this at the end of the season. They anticipated playing 16, 17 games and keeping their kids fresh all the way. And so they didn't play them. They limited snaps for a lot of guys during the course of the year, playing the long game.
Yeah.
And I'll be very interested to watch, the snap counts for Oregon's guys over the course of the season and compare to what they did last year with similar players at similar positions.
I remember Chip Kelly getting asked about that before the Oregon game in, last season. And he talked about playing slow. He's a guy who wants to play fast.
Yeah.
They took longer between snaps. They just wanted to play fewer snaps in general in each game. And then they limited the snap count with their personnel. And I really do think Oregon may have been doing that in week 1. Keep an eye on week 2. They have Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy. They should win that one by double digits as well. But,
let's get into that too. We should get into the Gundy situation in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Let's look at week 2. Let's include that. Oklahoma State, Oregon at Autzen Stadium.
Yep.
I'll be at that game. I don't think Mike Gundy should have poked the bear here, because we've seen Dan Lanning, when he pays attention to something like this or what's being said, there's just something extra that happens. It happened against Colorado a couple seasons ago, and Oregon laid it on Colorado. You just don't want to give him any extra incentive. And I think Gundy did that by pointing out the money, even though Gundy's right to point out the money.
Yeah.
He's not telling a lie here. I mean, there's some truth in what he's saying. He also had T. Boone Pickens give him, $650 million to that program, and it's still inside that program somewhere. So, maybe what Gundy should have said is, hey, look, we used to have T. Boone. He died. We're living in life after a billionaire. And they have, Oregon's got Phil Knight, and he's 87. Yeah. So, a bit of a cautionary tale there, but also, why bring it up? Why bring it up? Why even make it a thing right now?
Well, who do you got Oregon? I think that line is what, 28 or something? It's huge. I mean, it's a massive line that you could not have imagined, a year ago. And then Oklahoma State just had a terrible season.
Yeah.
And their quarterback's hurt.
The quarterback's hurt. It's at Autzen. Oregon's playing for something extra. I'll wait to make my official pick, but I like Oregon big in that game.
Okay.
I think Lanning will pour it on. I kind of saw Lincoln Riley in the opener wanting to do that, to send a message. There may be a message sent in this Oregon-Oklahoma State game, like, hey, it's money well spent.
Okay.
Pass the hat around the stadium for Mike Gundy during the game. But another game, I'm obviously looking at the two Pac-12 schools, Wilner. They've got to win. Jimmy Rogers got to be better. Washington State's got to be better. They're playing San Diego State. That's a future Pac-12 school.
Yes.
Oregon State has Fresno State at home. And for me, the Oregon State game is a must-win for Trent Bray. Like, week 2 is a must-win for Trent Bray. He cannot lose this game, then go to Texas Tech, then go to Oregon. He's 0-4, possibly 0-5 after that, because here comes Houston after that. So, look, if you're Oregon State, this is it. You've got to play great football. Malik Murphy's got to be better. They have to be prepared. That is a really intriguing game for me in Corvallis.
I also wonder, for both the Beavers and the Cougars at home against future conference rivals, peers, to me, there's a bigger, I totally agree with you about the immediate necessity for Oregon State to win. But it's also just kind of interesting when you put it in context of what's coming next summer, with the Pac, the rebuilt conference, and how Oregon State and Washington State kind of fare relative to the schools that are coming in, right? I mean, if they lose, that sends a message about the state of their programs relative to the top half of the Mountain West. And it kind of, I think it's going to raise the question, like, is it more Oregon State and Washington State going kind of stepping down to meet their new schools halfway? And if they win, then I think the narrative is more, Boise, San Diego State, Fresno State, moving up into the new Pac-12. Like, it's hard for me to kind of
perception. There's a perception issue there.
Yeah. Just where are the Pac-2 relative to the newcomers? And I think this week's going to tell us a lot about that.
Yeah. And look, Oregon State has signed on for this football game in 2028. ESPN's got the rights to it. It's in Las Vegas. It'll be the early season game against BYU.
Yeah.
This is, Scott Barnes, the AD at Oregon State, was pushing for a matchup like that. They want the showcase. Well, I know we're several years away, but we know how it goes in college football. It's not that long until you get to that game. And so you can't afford a start over. And look at the 4 teams you talked about: Washington State, San Diego State, Oregon State, Fresno State, all relatively new coaches with those programs. And so there's no excuse here for the 2 Pac-12 schools. Go win these games or people are going to talk about you.
Right. And Washington State, they did win, but boy, they did not look good.
Yeah.
Non-existent running game, close call against Idaho. If they lose at home, to the Aztecs, it's going to be tough season in Pullman. There's no doubt about that.
What else are you looking at in week 2?
I'm looking at, speaking of Washington State, I think this is a huge opportunity for a former quarterback at Washington State this week. Oklahoma's hosting Michigan. Oklahoma, I believe, is a 5.5-point favorite. I am all over the Sooners. John Mateer, I think this is a chance for him. It's the ABC national game, 4:30 Pacific. Like, this is the John Mateer Heisman campaign national coming out party against a Big Ten, 2023 national champs. Michigan's got a high-profile freshman quarterback, Bryce Underwood. I think this is a great opportunity for Mateer to show a lot of people who are not familiar that he is, one of the best quarterbacks in the game. So I'm looking forward to that one, actually. And that's I think that is the only ranked versus rank matchup of week 2. In that regard, it's a little bit of a barren Saturday.
Yeah, and Mateer can play. I mean, there's storylines across football. Mateer can play. So can Michigan stop him? I think Oklahoma's going to have a great season. I think they're a playoff team, or they're going to be right on the fringe of the playoffs. But Mateer in the Heisman conversation after this week, we'll see. Where else are your eyes?
My eyes are also in Starkville. I am curious about Arizona State at Mississippi State. Mississippi State was terrible last year. ASU beat them in Tempe. ASU is a 10-point favorite. They've been practicing with the cowbells ringing on the practice field in Tempe. But it is a sneaky, tough game. I think it's going to be tougher. You got the heat, the atmosphere, the cowbells. Mississippi State's probably a little better than they were last year. How much is ASU kind of just feeling good about their situation? This one feels like could be an upset to me. Very, very interested to see how ASU responds to the environment and going in there as the favorite, as a double-digit favorite in SEC country. A whole new world for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, and Kenny Dillingham, he's played it's us against the world. Now you're with the world. How do you do as you go down into that game?
Indeed.
That'll be a good one.
What else are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at the way coaches are talking to each other, Wilner, and I want to talk about this. The bickering coaches, Brian Kelly and Dabo Sweeney exchanging barbs after their game.
And they got some explosive dudes, and it was a hell of a game. It was a hell of a game. Down to the last play. Right out of the gate. It's like getting the final exam day 1 of class. They made a 65, we made a 58.
Dominated him in the second half. So he's either a really good grader for, giving himself a 58, or he's a really hard grader on us, or he didn't see the second half, which that might be the case. He might not have wanted to see the second half.
Dan Lanning and Mike Gundy exchanging some barbs. And I have a wild theory on this. I think it's rooted in, there's nothing that upsets coaches more and pits them against each other than recruiting. And I think we're in this era of NIL and recruiting that is unprecedented. I think we're getting a lot of this with coaches hitting up against each other in recruiting battles and collective battles. And I think some of that frustration's boiling over. But, you got an LSU and Clemson thing. You got Oklahoma State and Oregon. I just think the coaches are dealing with each other a little different.
Well, and they're using the money as excuses, in some cases, I think. And certainly that's what Lanning seemed to imply, right? With his comments about Gundy, after Gundy, I don't know if complain's the right word, but pointed out the disparity in how much has been invested in the two rosters between Oklahoma State and Oregon. I thought Lanning handled it pretty well. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to do it. There's one, I know it's a sore subject with the Oregon coaching staff because they don't want the narrative out there that they're just buying better talent and that's how they're winning football games. But unfortunately,
good luck.
That's part of the narrative. And so you can lean away from that. And I think he tried that last season. He tried to say, we're coaching these guys. We don't have endless resources. Remember all that stuff last year? Now he's saying, hey, basically the money spends. And, we're interested in going for it and we want to spend money. But I think he's signaling to recruits, hey, we've got money here. Maybe they don't. But if you want to get into the have and have nots, Mike Gundy, you're in a Power 4 conference. Let's start with that. You had T. Boone Pickens. there's also that. He played UT Martin, as Dan Lanning pointed out. There was a financial disparity there.
Yes.
It's across college football. You see the payday games going on. That's what the money's for, to lure your team into the stadium. But I thought Lanning handled it as well as he could have.
It's good content.
For sure is. Let's pivot to the Pac-12 updates.
Okay.
So there's a court hearing coming. What do you know about that? Yeah.
Tuesday, the court, Northern District, California, hearing on the Mountain West motion to dismiss. Right now, just to clarify, this is the poaching penalty lawsuit Pac-12 filed against the Mountain West, and they tried mediation, went nowhere. My sense is, from the folks I've talked to, I would put the judge denying the motion to dismiss as probably a 6.5 point favorite over. It's not a blowout. It's not guaranteed, but I think denying the motion to dismiss certainly a notable favorite over the judge granting the motion and dismissing the case. So I think two things folks should watch for. One is if the potential for each side to get really nervous right up before the motion, before the hearing on Tuesday, last minute settlement. I think that's very unlikely, but I would not rule it out. And then once we get through Tuesday, assuming that the motion is denied and the lawsuit moves forward, then I think the chance of a settlement increases exponentially.
Yeah.
In the 2, 3, 4 weeks after the Tuesday hearing, because I still believe neither side wants to go to trial, and they kind of want to see what the cards are, each other's cards are, and the hearing will probably provide some of that. And so good chance there's a settlement, I would say, by the end of September, early October, if the motion to dismiss is denied.
Yeah. And, a longtime litigator that I talked with called that a pivot point. And he said, look, there are these pivot points that happen within these lawsuits. And this is one of them, because the Mountain West wants this case that this suit that the Pac-12 has brought to court. They wants it dismissed. Judge is unlikely to do that. And I think the Pac-12 feels strong. It's interesting when you talk to both sides, Wilner, they both say, we have a good case. We have a good case. There are some presidents on the Mountain West side who have legal backgrounds that the conference appears to be leaning into. We know how that goes from the Pac-12 standpoint when presidents start getting involved. Sometimes that can create problems because you have an expert in the room and you don't really have a real world expert in the room. You have a scholar in the room. But I think it's going to a settlement as well. I think that, we'll eventually end up in a settlement position. On the other front, in the Pac-12, media rights, I've been on this for a while. It's the CBS and the CW are in.
Yep.
You do the math on this, Wilner. It looks like, CBS and CBS Sports and the CW will combine to have about 2 games a week during the college football season. So, you just start to do the math on the teams. There's a chunk of inventory that's still out there that is out in the market. Now, I've been told probably 2 more partners are coming in on this. I think ESPN's direct-to-consumer offering is going to be one of them, but I had Warner Brothers Discovery in there as well. And given that they had lost the NBA, I thought maybe there's a chance Warner Brothers Discovery comes in. I know they've been talking to the Pac-12. I also know there's a streaming service out there that kind of entered the fray in the last couple of weeks. Don't know who that is, but somebody out there is talking with the Pac-12. But there's some issues at Warner Brothers Discovery right now with their management structure that make it difficult for them to make sort of unilateral decisions and have like this big buy. And it kind of reminds me of the Pac-12's bad timing when they tried to do the last round of media rights. They had really bad timing with layoffs at Disney and ESPN, and the bidders weren't all the way engaged. And so I think that explains some of the delay here on this third piece. I think Warner Brothers Discovery likes the Pac-12, but they're trying to figure out how do they get the deal done with their current management structure, which is a little disjointed.
Yeah, there are, I would say at least, I did the math when they announced the CW deal, and at least 12 to 15 more games available, and it could be, up to 20, and a lot of it depends on how many teams are in the league, how many conference games, how many non-conference games. It's multi-dimensional chess here still, but I keep getting back to the fact that it seems most likely that there are only going to be 8 football playing schools next season. And so they're going to have to figure out, are they going to play 7 or are they going to play 8?
Yeah.
And that will impact the inventory that's available.
I think too, I still think there's a chance they have a football only school come in. So let's keep an eye on that. But, but the clock's ticking. You start to schedule a year out and here comes, we're a year out. So I also think on another front, like the CW piece that we really didn't talk about, I think women's basketball was a big winner in that CW piece. There are a bunch of women's basketball games on the CW, going to get wide exposure. I think it matches what the Pac-12 network offered back in the day, and maybe exceeds that because it's national, and the conference championships and semifinals potentially on the CW as well. So women's basketball was a big winner. And I think too, the next piece I'm looking at is, the conference football and basketball championships. Will they be in Vegas? It seems like they should be. There's a ton of stuff still up in the air. We'll have it all covered. You can read me at johncanzano.com. You can read him at wilnerhotline.com. Make sure you tell us in the comments section what you think of week 1. What was your big takeaway? And what are you looking forward to in week 2? And we'll be back next week with an all-new episode.
Thanks, everybody.